All right, Cowboys Nation, buckle up, because there's a whole lot brewing behind the scenes in Dallas. And it's the kind of storm that could either shake things up in the best way or remind us all how chaotic the NFL can get when egos start clashing and rosters start shifting. Let's kick things off with what's probably been the hottest name flying around Cowboys rumors lately, Max Crosby. So, let's set the record straight. Reports came in, straight from credible sources, that the Las Vegas Raiders met with Crosby to personally tell him he's not being traded. Not now, not later. They want him in Vegas. He wants to be in Vegas. Sounds like the book is closed on that one, right? But here's where it gets interesting for us Cowboys fans. This isn't just about Max Crosby anymore. This is about the Cowboys' name being all over the place in trade talks. Where there's smoke, there's usually fire. And right now, the Cowboys are setting off alarms all over the league. Even if Crosby's off the table, the fact that the Cowboys were even loosely connected to a player of that caliber tells you one thing. They're looking. They're not sitting back hoping the roster magically comes together by January. They're making calls, they're in conversations, they're feeling things out behind closed doors. Maybe it's not all full-blown trade negotiations with names and numbers being thrown around yet, but it's obvious there's some groundwork being laid. We've seen this play out before. Remember the whole circus around Micah Parsons last offseason? The team kept things close to the chest, played coy in front of the media, but all along, they were planning something big. So when I hear the Cowboys' name buzzing like this again, I pay attention. That doesn't happen for nothing. That doesn't happen unless GMs and execs around the league are getting a feeling, hearing whispers, or even having back-channel conversations about what the Cowboys might be up to. Now, don't expect fireworks tomorrow. The trade deadline is still about 2 weeks away. But this is the quiet before the storm. This is the front office doing its due diligence. Whether they pull the trigger or not, the activity is real. And if you're a fan of this team, and not just a fan of the vibes, you should be encouraged by that. Because it means the front office knows this team needs something more. They're not just riding on what they've got. They're trying to build something serious. That's the part that should have you hyped. Now, let's slide over to some actual moves that did go down on the roster. The Cowboys elevated wide receiver Jonathan Mingo to the active roster. At the same time, they placed offensive lineman Trevor Keegan on injured reserve. That's a tough break for the line, especially this late in the season when chemistry is everything. But there's some silver lining here too. DeMarvion Overshown, Savion Red, and Cooper Beebe all had their practice windows opened up starting Wednesday. That's huge. That means we're probably going to see Overshown and Savion Red back on the field within the next few weeks. And that's going to give this defense a serious boost. The timing is perfect, too. We've got a bye coming up in about 2 games. If all goes well, by the time the Cowboys take the field after the bye, we could be looking at a fully loaded, fully healthy defense. And let me tell you, Overshown is one of those guys I've got my eye on. He brings speed, instinct, and some real fire to the field. I'm not going to throw sky-high expectations on him fresh off an injury, but I do believe this kid has something special in him. He's the type of player who can grow into a key piece of this unit, and I'm excited to see how he progresses. But now, let's talk about what's really been stirring the pot this week, Trevon Diggs. And oh boy, it's not about his play on the field. It's about what's been going down off the field. So apparently, your boy got blocked. Yes, Diggs blocked me on X. And listen, I don't even tag players like that. I don't go out of my way to stir the pot. But clearly, something I said made its way to him, and he didn't like it. That's fine. I'm not here crying about it. I'm just saying, if you're out here blocking folks who talk about your performance, maybe you're spending too much time worrying about social media and not enough time worrying about your job on the field. Because let's keep it real, Diggs hasn't been the shutdown corner we hoped he'd be. There's been more bad tape than good lately. And when he's not on the field, this defense has actually looked more cohesive, more disciplined, more aggressive. I know that's a hot take, but if you're watching the games, you see it too. And Jerry Jones sees it. That's why, when asked about Diggs' injury situation, Jerry straight up said, "I feel good about the team's ability to play without him." Read between the lines. That's not just some casual answer. That's an owner saying, "Hey, we might not miss this guy as much as you think." That should scare the hell out of Diggs. Because when the front office starts thinking you're replaceable, that's when they start making moves. That's when pink slips start getting printed. That's when your seat in the locker room gets a little colder. Diggs, instead of scrolling through your mentions and blocking anybody who critiques your game, Maybe take a look in the mirror and ask yourself, are you really playing at a level that justifies the star on your helmet? Are you really giving your all for this team? Or are you just coasting on your name? Because what we've seen, especially in your absence, is a secondary that looks tighter, hungrier, more locked in. And that says a lot. Maybe too much. The fact that you weren't even at the stadium for a game says even more. That's not a good look. Not when this team is fighting to stay competitive in the NFC. Not when young guys are stepping up and proving themselves every week. And definitely not when you've got a quarterback like Dak Prescott taking heat left and right and still showing up to lead. And speaking of Dak, let's not forget that viral clip of Diggs yelling at him on the sideline a couple seasons back. At the time, it seemed like harmless passion. But now, with all this context, it hits different. It looks more like a player who's always been about himself. A player who's trying to push his way into some power play with Micah Parsons. A player who maybe thought he and Micah were going to be the new kings of the locker room. But this ain't high school. You don't get to bully your way into leadership. You earn it. With play, with character, with commitment. And honestly, the vibes have been so much better without Diggs in the building. That's not something I'm saying lightly. That's coming from the way this team carries itself now. More focus, less drama, fewer distractions. The energy has shifted, and it's not just because of one guy, but man, his absence is definitely part of the story. So Trevon, if you're hearing this, maybe take it as a wake-up call. Nobody's rooting against you. I'd love nothing more than to see you lock it down and remind everyone why you made the Pro Bowl. But right now, it looks like your time in Dallas might be winding down. And not because fans are turning on you, but because your own team might be ready to move on. And that should hit harder than any tweet or roast ever could. And here's the thing that nobody wants to say out loud, but everybody's thinking. This Cowboys organization has changed. The patience isn't what it used to be. This front office is watching every rep, every press conference, every tweet, and they're calculating what kind of energy you bring to the building. They're not just looking at talent anymore. They're measuring value, attitude, and whether you're helping or hurting the culture they're trying to build. Trevon Diggs might be talented, no doubt, but if your presence becomes more about distraction than production, the Cowboys have shown they're not afraid to move on. Think about what happened this offseason. Look at how many veterans are no longer here. Look at the emphasis they're putting on younger players who buy in, who show up early, who don't get into drama on social media. That's not a coincidence. That's direction. That's culture shifting. And if Diggs thinks he's immune from that just because of his name or because of that contract he signed, he's wrong. Because the Cowboys are sending a clear message. Either you're part of the solution or you're gone. This is a team trying to build something that lasts, and that means trimming the fat, even if that fat used to be a franchise corner. And it's not just Trevon. You can see the ripples of this culture shift across the entire locker room. Micah Parsons, as electric as he is on the field, has had to answer questions about leadership, about maturity, about whether or not he's ready to be the face of the franchise. The Cowboys are being deliberate about who they empower. They want warriors. They want dogs. They want guys who will go to war for the star and not just themselves. The second it feels like you're more concerned with your brand than your brothers, you're on thin ice. That's the reality in Dallas right now. And it's interesting, because for years the narrative was that the Cowboys were soft, that they were too loyal, that they would hang on to underperforming players way too long because of name value or draft status. But now we're seeing a different tone. They're being more cutthroat. They're being more proactive. They're recognizing when something isn't working, and they're actually taking steps to fix it. Even if that means hurting some feelings or shaking up the locker room. That's growth. That's what competitive teams do. But let's zoom back in on Diggs, because we can't ignore the elephant in the room. The guy hasn't exactly been the lockdown corner we hoped he'd evolve into. Sure, he racks up interceptions. He's got hands like a wide receiver and instincts you can't teach. But in terms of consistency, in terms of being trusted in big moments, down after down, week after week, that's where the questions start piling up. And unfortunately for Diggs, those questions are getting louder. The tape doesn't lie. Teams are not afraid to target him. They test him in the red zone. They bait him with double moves. They isolate him and expose the fact that, while he can make a splash play, he also gives up big ones. That's not what you want from your CB1. That's not what you pay elite money for. And as the defense evolves, as young guys step up, as the coaching staff fine-tunes the scheme, the question becomes, Do we actually need this guy to do what we want to do? And when Jerry Jones comes out and says the team played well without him, that speaks volumes. It's not about throwing shade. It's about facts. It's about what the tape shows and what the locker room feels like. Because energy matters. Vibes matter. And if Diggs' absence improves both, how long do you keep holding on? How long do you wait for him to turn into what you thought he'd be, instead of acknowledging what he actually is? That's why all this matters. That's why these conversations aren't just internet gossip. Because they're real. They're connected to a shift that's happening in Dallas that might define the next 5 years of Cowboys football. We're talking about a team that's tired of being close, tired of being talked about, tired of being America's team without the rings to prove it. They want change. They want toughness. They want players who live and breathe for the star, not just wear it for the clout. So when someone like Diggs starts making headlines not for a pick six or a game-saving deflection, but because he's blocking fans, arguing online, and disappearing from the stadium during games, that's when you know it's gone too far. That's when you start to wonder if the relationship is salvageable. That's when trades stop feeling like rumors and start feeling like inevitabilities. And honestly, it wouldn't even be shocking at this point. If the Cowboys flipped Trevon Diggs for a draft pick or a more consistent veteran presence, most fans wouldn't even blink. That's how far the narrative has shifted. That's how normalized it's become to think about life after Diggs. And when a player of that caliber starts becoming expendable in the minds of fans and execs alike, that's when the clock starts ticking. Before we roll on, subscribe to Cowboys Wire News, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Your support keeps the Dallas Cowboys updates coming. Tell us what you think in the comments. Rumors are swirling around the NFL as the latest controversy involves none other than Joe Buck, the famed broadcaster known for his sharp commentary and strong opinions. Sources close to the industry are buzzing after comments allegedly made by Buck, in which he reportedly criticized the Dallas Cowboys in no uncertain terms. While Buck is no stranger to stirring the pot, this time, insiders say, his words may have ignited tensions among fans and analysts alike. According to whispers from within broadcasting circles, Buck's critique was pointed, touching on the team's recent performances and questioning the direction in which the Cowboys are heading. While the details remain murky, the insinuation is that Buck does not see the team living up to the hype that surrounds the iconic franchise. For Cowboys supporters, this has created a stir, as any negative remark about America's team tends to ignite passionate responses across social media and sports talk shows. Some speculate that Buck's comments are rooted in frustration over the team's inconsistency on the field. Despite star players and high-profile drafts, the Cowboys have struggled to maintain momentum in key games, and Buck, known for his candid assessments, may have finally expressed what many analysts have been hinting at for months. Whether his criticism will have any tangible impact on the locker room or the fan base is unclear, but the rumor alone has set off a flurry of debate online. Industry insiders suggest that Buck's statements, if true, are more than just casual commentary. They might reflect a growing narrative about the Cowboys' need for change and reinvention. While some fans defend the team passionately, others quietly nod in agreement, acknowledging that the franchise's star power has not always translated into consistent success. As the NFL season unfolds, all eyes will be on both Buck and the Cowboys, each aware that public perception can swing wildly with a single broadcast. Whether Joe Buck intended to provoke discussion or simply let his honest opinion slip, the rumor has already taken on a life of its own. In the world of sports media, few things ignite conversation like a high-profile broadcaster seemingly throwing shade at a storied franchise. And if history is any guide, this story is far from over. Expect the Cowboys, their fans, and the media to keep the chatter going, game after game. That's a wrap from Cowboys Wire News. For breaking Cowboys updates, subscribe, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Tell us your take in the comments.